consider censoring,
Sure.
censoring, Lindsey Graham. Do you support that, or do you think that's?
Yeah, I do. Because I think it sends a message. It's one that it may have no direct effect, but it does tell the people out there what the party faith will feel about someone who has not stood by Republican principles. And I think when it comes to voting for Sotomayor, voting for Kagan, the Grandmacy programs, things of that nature, I think he's bought what he has. I'm glad to see all the debate and all the ideas, and I'm a little disturbed to hear about some of the pressures put in places like Horry County, because frankly, we're a free people to make free decisions, and but at the same time, though, I do believe censure is something that's out there, and I support it. Yes, ma'am.
The phone calls are starting. Okay, you said what happened to Horry County?
Yes.
The same thing is trying to be taking place in Berkeley County on the 17th. I've already gotten a phone call. I'm a committee person.
Got it.
And the phone call is telling us that censure is not, it is if somebody has broken the law, their morals or something like that. But the definition of censor is not what we are trying to do.
Well, see,
And one of our committee persons put on the internet, from the dictionary, the definition of censure. And it's exactly what we're doing. You don't, we were told we're dividing the party. You can't do that.
Sure.
So in my mind, a primary is what we bring our candidates up, and then they have the chance to say what they believe and everything, and we are divided.
Right.
We all don't agree on the same candidate. We are divided. We get to that primary, and my goal is to keep Lindsey Graham under 50%. And ever who does it, and he goes into the runoff,
Sure.
then we're gonna unite.
Sure.
But for me to get a phone call and
Yeah.
tell me, you're stupid, you don't know what you're doing,
Right.
but that's what's going on. And
Yeah.
as far as his vote for Sotomayor and Hagan, the reason he did it was because he went by the Constitution. They were both qualified, so he had to do it. That was what I was told.
See, and here, just to answer some of that, is I believe if somebody breaks their oath, which is their oath is, it's interesting, because as an Army officer, you take an oath. Bill Connor, who solemnly swear I support the Constitution as long as foreign and domestic, and bear true faith and belief. That same oath is the exact same oath as I'll take as a U.S. Senator. And if you break that oath, to me, that is a moral issue. That is a moral, and frankly, in some of these issues that come up with Lindsey Graham, I believe they deviate from what the Constitution is
But
put
he
in
was
state.
saying that both the Sotomayor and
Oh, sure.
Hagan had
See,
signed that Constitution,
What-
that they were qualified. So therefore,
see,
he had to go by the Constitution and recommend that they be confirmed.
Yeah, well, see, I believe you're wrong. Clearly in this one, it says by the advice, just like with treaties, it's by the advice and consent of the Congress, which means they do have in this case, the ability to advise and consent. And so that is absolutely one where it's amazing to look at a man who doesn't have an issue with something like the National Department of Education, doesn't understand what Common Core is, doesn't understand that it's completely beyond what anything is allowed in the Constitution, and yet goes to say that he believes constitutionally is required to look at qualifications. Now, here's the thing with qualifications is again, I'm an attorney. Now, it's one thing to graduate law school, pass the bar exam. It's another if you don't understand the Constitution and what it really means. And one of the problems in law schools is they start with the case Marbury versus Madison and then work their way on up. Unless you do stuff on your own like I did, you don't read the Federalist Papers. You don't understand where the decisions were made and what the words mean. And in Sotomayor and Kagan's case, I don't believe they're constitutional, therefore I don't believe they're qualified. So even beyond this whole issue, it's one where I would say, excuse me, the Second Amendment means what it says, Sotomayor and Kagan. And oh, by the way, when you look at the Roe v. Wade decision, it was absolutely, even the liberals say it was a bad decision, bad holding, doesn't make sense the way they worded it, the whole idea of penumbras and emanations from the Bill of Rights. So, and all that, I've heard the same argument. I've heard, too, the argument from Lindsey Graham that elections have consequences. Well, there's an election coming up, and it's going to have consequences. And you can't try to make up for it now, because for 4 years, you were as liberal as you can be. And we're not stupid as South Carolinians. So that's kind of part of the message is, yes, I appreciate Benghazi, Fauci, you're doing some good
But
work
that was
there.
late, that was John
You're right.
Cudley.
Exactly.
We have
Yeah.
to thank Trey Gowdy and
Right.
Jason Chavis for that.
I agree. What you're seeing is, you're seeing him out there with his AR-15 doing things like this, and, to me, it's a lot of showmanship. I mean, the bottom line is, 2 decades is enough. And one thing I will tell you too, and it's important to know about me, and this is something I believe you should ask the other candidates that are challengers, is I've given my word of honor every place I've been, 2 terms is it. I will not go beyond 2 terms, period. And I'll sign whatever piece of paper I need to that effect, but I believe one of the problems has been that we get professional politicians that serve all these years, working their way up, possibly state, wherever it is. Then they go to Congress, and in Lindsey Graham's case, he spent 5 or 6 years in the state legislature, 20 years in Congress. We tack on both the things. He'll be 35, 40 years in politics at this point. That's not what the founders intended. They intended someone to serve. Service means they go there for a period of time, they come back. And in my case, I have given my word again, 2 terms is it. I may do 1 term, but 2 terms. And also, I plan to really hit the issue of the retirement system. I don't think you should be able to go to Congress and become financially better off to go to service. I don't believe that. So one of the things I plan to do is introduce legislation to get those salaries down and cut out this garbage where, as a military officer, I've served 23 years. I'm not going to draw my retirement till age 59, which is okay. That's fine. But for a congressman to serve for a couple of years and then suddenly they have a lifetime retirement, that to me is absolutely wrong. It's just not something our founders intended. And so, yes, sir. Sorry.
You already answered one of the questions I asked about.
Sure.
I was going to ask about tournaments.
Yes.
I would like to say one thing. There are many of us in this room who took the same oath that you did.
Sure, yeah.
And just because we retired or got out of the service, did not renounce that oath.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen.
My question to you is, how did you feel about the 17th Amendment? And what would you do about that if you
Yeah.
disagree with it?
Sure. I mean, actually, I'll go through even what 17th Amendment. In 1913, you saw some major shifts because you saw a number of things go on. One of the things is the income tax, which was absolutely unconstitutional to begin with. Now, the amended Constitution, so technically it's allowed. I want to go to fair tax. That's one thing. Then you come to the issue of senators, and senators originally were to be from the states. And I'm working with the system we have right now. The Constitution was amended, so it's constitutional now. But the original idea was the Senate was different than the House. And the Senate was meant to be picked from the state legislatures, and senators go up. That's interesting too. I want to talk about little time period things. All this fits together, by the way. One of my heroes growing up was Teddy Roosevelt because he charged San Juan Hill. And I still respect him, kind of like John McCain, for what he did in certain areas. But he also was progressive. If you look at what he did, I mean, he went to the Bull Moose, the Progressive Party, all this sort of thing that Woodrow Wilson took even farther. And actually, in some ways, in him running against Taft as a progressive, brought a ton of mistakes. And we saw that whole progressive era in that early time. So another thing that occurred was the issue of the Fed. I mean, y'all may know the history, but the Fed was some bankers getting together in private and putting together this monstrosity that was a central bank. And it went against everything we believed in. For many years, we debated the central bank. And we said, no, we're not going to go with the central bank. We're going to allow the marketplace to work. We're going to use precious metals. In other words, basically right now fiat money. But the problem was we had the Fed, we had the income tax, and then we also had state senators being changed. And I, quite frankly, feel like all of those were mistakes. Now, of course, I'm running as a state senator, so I've got to go out to the population. And that's one that I'd support going back. But it really was, we needed, within history classes, I was looking at my daughter's history books, and I have 2 children in private school. One is doing the Connections Academy, which is a charter online school system. So you see some of the stuff they teach kids. And they make it seem like that progressive era, starting with the stuff I just talked about up through FDR, was some great time in America that we became a wonderful, and you need to teach kids, no, that was actually mistakes we made. We were a great nation when we were free, and we followed the Constitution, and then we started really moving into the idea of government involvement, starting with Teddy Roosevelt, quite frankly, moving all the way up. And yes, ma'am.
What can we do to put Lindsey in a position where he has to debate? Because I think if people in South Carolina could see him debate,
Right.
that you would shine against him, and I think he fears that. I've known
Sure.
Lindsey Graham for years and years and years,
Right.
personally, and he fears that right now.
Sure. Sure.
What can the people do to force
Right.
his hand and make him get into a debate with Lindsay on his right?
Sure. You know, part of this is I'm going to start really ratcheting up the pressure, calling him out, throwing the gauntlet down, because I'm tired of him missing everything that's going on. Now, we do have to get the poll numbers up there, so he does have the need. But part of it is, I think citizens out there making the same fuss and contacting papers. I gotta tell you,
I'm gonna do a letter
I
to the
appreciate
editor about that.
Well, that's
I'm gonna
actually-
force the issue.
that's a great point, the letter to the editor. 'Cause I'm going to tell you all right now, running as a conservative candidate, it's amazing how they marginalized us.
Mhm.
I mean, the Post and Courier had this Brian, whatever his name was,
Brian
Brian
Hicks.
Adams.
Brian Hicks, I think was the
Brian.
Yeah, Brian Hicks, who, you know, we had this debate in Rock Hill where we talked about all the issues. We went through details of them. He wasn't there, and all he said about was, we were like right-wing nuts or some, you know, just crazy marginalizing statement. I'm thinking, buddy, you've got some people here fairly accomplished. I mean, you got a state senator, you got a lieutenant colonel who's done this sort of thing. We have guys with doctorate level. You got a bunch of people that have accomplished. We're coming here to debate, and all you're doing is pushing us off to wherever. Now, I mentioned, for example, for me, I mean, again, I'm not ashamed to be an Orangeburg tournament. There's a lot more to my life. And they always tell me about Lindsey Graham, that he's been an Air Force colonel. I got you on that. I'd like to match, you know, myself on stage and talk about some of these issues and talk about the experiences and where he's gone and what he's done. But I think part of it is letters of the editor they've got to put in there and say, look, these stories right now are all pro-Lindsey. Y'all see them. It's, oh, Lindsey's, the latest one I saw was, you know, fundraising losers. Well, I'm sorry, I've been in a race before, and raising $250,000 in a quarter is not bad, and especially with the challenge we got. So,
He's got $7 million sitting there.
oh, he does. Yeah, no, and actually, you know, I was looking at a different place. He's going to Louisiana for a bunch of liberal trial lawyers who are giving him a whole bunch of money and things of that nature. So, I mean, he's going all around picking up money,
Yeah.
and so I think letters of the editor is a great way to get the word out. So,
I think the debate that was held in Myrtle Beach was an excellent forum. I mean, he was there, his words
Yeah,
on
that's right.
videotape, and if
That's
he
right.
wants to show up and refute
yep,
the tape that's presented, then
Sure.
let him show up. Otherwise, let the tape speak for him.
amen. And part of that too is, I mean, did y'all see any press coverage of the Myrtle Beach? I mean,
None.
here it was, this major thing that we all prepared for. We all came in, all four candidates,
Mhm.
and you know, and even talking about competitors. I mean, you had the first, you know, senator graduate, you got state senator, you got a lot of people in there. Richard Cash, great guy. I'm sorry, but you've got a lot of people here who are credible people, and the media just loves Lindsey. So the way we break through that is letters to the editor, forcing them on their hand, and you know, and things of that nature. Just, I was very disappointed with the lack of press coverage.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Lindsay and his attitude, and I told the person that called me on the phone yesterday this too, but in 2009, we
Yeah.
had been to DC for a rally on the bus.
I remember
We
that,
got
yeah.
back in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Brown and McCain were having a town hall at the Citadel,
Mhm.
and it was at 9 o'clock in the morning. So most of us just went home real quick, showered, and went to the
Sure.
Citadel. And one of the first questions to him was, why are we having a town hall meeting at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning when people are at work?
Yeah.
And Lindsay's response was, because I'm the senator and I can.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the young man that I talked to on the phone, he was a cadet at the Citadel
Yeah.
at that time.
Sure.
And he said he was there. And I said, well,
Right.
then you remember that, right?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. And I said, was there a lot of booze? He said, yeah, there sure was. But he said, to be honest, Lindsay could have handled that better. But, you know, he's such a busy man that he probably didn't have time any other time to be there.
Mhm.
But he could have handled it better.
Right. Yeah. It's just pitiful to watch. I remember in 2009, I just got involved in, again, politics, first state convention. And I recall him, you know, telling a group that there's the door, you hit half the door, and just being very disrespectful to those that he disagreed with. And I was kind of flabbergasted. And, but yet he won't debate people. So, you know, once we force him to debate, though,
Well, I think
here's how I will say this much, is that if he's forced into a runoff, I will pound him in that debate. So I give you that word, my word on that.
I have an idea. I thought, what do you think is the most important thing that we need to do in this country to protect our republic?
I think the biggest thing it starts with is the border and with our illegal immigration problem. It starts with that. But then the other thing, tying right into it, is those people are sending to D.C. And I think until we fix that, the people are up in D.C., and that's why, I'm talking about the term limits issue, is we've got to fix the culture in Washington. What I see from the outside looking in is a lot of people who all they care about is themselves. And how someone can stay 2 decades, 3 decades, 3.5 decades up in D.C. and watch what that does to them, watch them get sucked into that culture. Because one thing is, they get sucked into Washington, D.C. press media culture. And the media will tell you what you should be. So, for example, this country's pretty well split on abortion, but within the media, I guarantee you, 99% of reporters and that kind of particular elite media are all pro-choice. And so if you're around that long enough and you want to be liked by them, you eventually become like a John McCain and Lindsey Graham. It becomes part of who you are. So if we can get term limits, if we can get the right people in D.C., if we can get back to the Constitution, and there's a number of different things we've got to attack at one time, we can fix it. But I'll tell you something too, that as a Christian, I believe that we are seeing things in what our country has done in turning away from our Judeo-Christian values. And I'll go back to the mid-'60s as probably a good example of what we've done as a nation and what we're seeing the effects of it now. You go back then to 1962 and 63, we got rid of the Bible reading school prayer. We went to no-fault divorce in the late 60s, early 70s. We went to Roe v. Wade. We had the Lemon decision, which got rid of God from all aspects of public life. We saw divorce rates. They went from single digits up to 50% in about a 15-year period. We saw single parenthood rates. And in fact, just take one demographic of African-American children. 25%, only 25% or less were born to single mothers in 1962. We flip-flop to now where it's over 75%. So, you look at, and by the way, too, it wasn't just the moral issues directly. It was also, which I see as a moral issue, is the Great Society programs, where you had these, Lyndon Johnson deciding to soak the war on poverty, and he instituted Medicaid, Medicare. And I'm going to tell you, we do need to uphold our standards because we promised people on Medicare. So don't get me wrong here. We're going to uphold our promises. But government got involved in things they should not have gotten involved in. And my wife is an OBGYN and sees what happened during that time. Because really, at that time, you could pretty much go to a doctor, pay out of pocket, and it wasn't that enormous. What happened was, with Medicaid, with Medicare, and only reimbursing doctors and hospitals at, say, 20%, then they all drove the prices up in order to recoup the money they had. And so it became such that, now if you go to the emergency room, you spend $12,000 for a hangnail. But that involvement where we went to welfare, food stamps, all these different things, and you look at the results of what they did, a biblical thing I follow is that the government's job is to defend us for the most part. It's Romans 13, 1 Peter 2, it's about the sword. When it comes to charity is the job of the church. And, a guy I love to read, Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville, said that in America, one of the great things is Americans' ability to develop voluntary organizations, charity organizations, multiple sects of Christianity, to where they all help each other. That's what we did. We all had these various things as Americans, and that was unlike France, where France turned away from God in the Revolution and turned away from that sort of thing, went to big government, and they failed. And so with our system, the key thing is get government out. Government's not the answer. And I got to say that looking at things from the 1960s on, in particular, we as a nation have turned our backs on our founders' roots. And one great thing I like about this is that it's not just the Constitution. The Constitution is based on the Declaration, particularly the preamble, that says all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And so, here's something important I think that people need to hear is that we are a God-fearing nation. And if you're atheist, you want to live here, that's fine. But we're under a God-fearing nation. There are some nations like Israel, the Jewish state. Some nations are Muslim states. We are a Christian country. And we have a Christian worldview which treats everyone equally while we're on earth, because what happens later is between a person and God. But we've moved away from what the founders gave us, which was a Judeo-Christian concept of government. Government is limited. It's about protecting us. It's about the sword. And then churches and individuals are about charity. So, I know it's a long answer to the whole thing, but we've got to tackle a number of different angles. And then, frankly, we set the environment where if we get rid of all these government programs, people are forced to go back again to what we've always been, which is Christian organization, churches, and that sort of thing. Yes,
The last thing I'm saying is, look around the room and look at our age group from here.
sure.
Everywhere I go, anybody that's involved in any of these meetings, if we don't have any young people, what can you do to
Sure.
get your message out
Right.
to a much younger crowd because they're voting?
Sure. That's a great question. I think one of the things I found during the lieutenant governor's race that was respected among young people is they're looking for what's real. To a lot of them, they get cynical because they see so many professional politicians who are slick and everything else, but they want to see a real story. And what they see is, I mean, I say it a lot of times, the people that go straight from college to interning for congressmen to eventually running for Congress, to just their entire life is with that structure. I think I'd like to offer them, look, I believe I am real, in that my life story is such that, you know, I didn't just talk, I put my money where my mouth was. I went overseas, I fought for this nation, you know, I went in the infantry, not the JAG Corps, and I want to send the message that, look, there are a lot of young people right now that are respected by their peers because after 9/11, they made a hard choice. I mean, they could have sat in pajamas on a computer somewhere, but they, you know, raised their right hand, they picked up a rifle, they went overseas, they put their life on the line. And people, the young people can respect that. Now, I gotta get the message out. And
But
part of,
how can we
sure,
get to the college age crowd, get the word out? How can they see you, meet you,
sure.
listen to what you have to say?
And part of that is gonna be some hard work. I mean, you know, one of the issues again comes out in the media. And I think if we keep pounding in with letters together, things of that nature about people, let them know the person's story and these kind of things, they can learn more about us. We do need to go to colleges. For me, I'm going to the USC College, I'm going to USC Law School. I'm trying to get with the college Republicans and get them, to know who I am and what I stand for. Sir.
Okay, I get your belief in the military is to break things and blow things up and enforce our policy. How do you feel about the turnabout where we're winning the hearts and the minds?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wrote about this actually coming back from Afghanistan. I briefed the Marines of the replacement helmet. Is we've really got a lot of things wrong in what we're doing there. What they're using as the model for counterinsurgency is the communist counterinsurgencies back in the 1960s before Malaysia in the 1950s. There was a book written by a guy named Colonel Nagel who was eating soup with a knife. And what they taught is at that time fighting communism, since communism believed they were the best economic system,